Hi folks, Steve here, and let's talk Evil Angels, also known as A Cry in the Dark. It was titled Evil Angels in Australia and New Zealand, and titled A Cry in the Dark outside of those countries. I'll get onto the problems of retitling a film, certainly when it comes to access, trying to give people access. What you're seeing here is the official poster for the Cannes Film Festival, where the film played at the 1989 festival and did pretty well. Fred Schepisi, the director, was nominated, didn't win. Meryl Streep won for her portrayal. I think what's interesting about the poster is you have the two things which are really on display with this film. Uluru, formerly known as Ayers Rock, which is how it's discussed and titled in the film, and of course Meryl Streep, and the two of them work quite nicely together. I'm not entirely sure why the film was retitled A Cry in the Dark. I'm not sure what you think of the title Cry in the Dark. If you had to rename an Australian film, what would you rename? That could be an interesting conversation to have in the classroom. But maybe a reason why it was retitled from Evil Angels is because when I was doing some research for this film and for this lecture, I put into the Google search drive Evil Angels, and how do I put this? Let me just say that Google sort of found a number of adult entertainment industry websites called Evil Angels, which obviously has nothing to do with the film. So maybe that's why. Maybe Evil Angels is more known in another certain adult entertainment industry. Perhaps not. I don't really know. But if you do know why the film was called A Cry in the Dark overseas, let me know. I'll be very interested to hear. So anyway, this is the poster. Have a think about this poster, whether it's effective. Does it really represent the film on display? And what sort of film are you expecting from this poster with Meryl Streep's head sort of angelically floating in the clouds over the rock of Uluru? Quite like it. There's Meryl, of course, with her hair cut short and dyed black to represent a pretty close similarity to Lindy Chamberlain, the subject of the film. Now, what you'll see, so this is another poster. This was the Australian poster. Again, Uluru features in this poster. Meryl Streep features, and Sam Neill, and the press, the hounding press, and they become very, very involved in the film, and really the film is about the bad press. You could certainly, if you're a journalism student, you may find some great, fascinating insight into the representation of the journalism world through a film like this. Also, if you're of a legal mind, the film, a lot of the film takes place in a courtroom, so it's also a really fascinating courtroom film. But the reason I've got this poster up next to the poster of Rabbit Proof Fence isn't because it's the same director. Rabbit Proof Fence is directed by Philip Noyce, even though they both, Fred Schepisi and Philip Noyce, share a similar narrative in that they both started in Australia, moved to America, and sort of came back, have sort of come back and forth making films. But what I think is interesting about these history films is the way they try and put the history back onto the individual. And this is, I mean, it's something that's more true for history films in general, but you do see it a lot in Australian films where the film itself is actually asking you the question, what if you were in this situation? The thing about Australian films, as we keep discussing, is they're not really interested in extraordinary people. They're not really interested in heroes in the sort of traditional Hollywood sense. They're interested in individuals thrown into a situation and then acting heroically. But heroically, not in that kind of Harrison Ford, the kick-ass president kind of way. More heroically through, and sort of an individual, um, fighting a system or just wanting to be part of the system. But if you look at the taglines for each film, so A Cry in the Dark, the tagline is "It could be yours," right? Of course, the baby they're talking about could be yours. The stolen baby or the disappearing baby, depending on whose side of the story you believe. Rope Proof Fence, which is just a great poster. What if the government kidnapped your daughter? See, they're putting it back to you, the individual, and asking you to have empathy through these characters because they're basically innocent victims thrown into this shitstorm, and then we sort of watch how they cope as human beings and individuals, and we're being asked to connect with them, asked to connect through history and to history through those things. So similar things going on in the posters, and you'll actually see this narrative actually flowing through a number of posters in the Australian cinema. And of course, these posters have connections to history and the way history is promoted and marketed on an international level as well. Now, of course, do I call it A Cry in the Dark or do I call it Evil Angels? I'm very conflicted here. I'll get to the copy I'm using soon. I'll call it Evil Angels because, hey, we're in Australia, and in Australia, the film was called Evil Angels. I'm making a decision. Okay, so Evil Angels is based on a true story. Have a think about what Meryl Streep is actually doing with the performance, and I mean, we could actually have a whole conversation devoted to Meryl Streep, and this being a Meryl Streep film. And the film is actually asking us to associate the film with Meryl Streep and put Meryl in the context. But think about what Meryl Streep actually does with her performance and the way she acts, and physical resemblance being so important to the history film and also to her. And think of other films, other Australian films, other history films that you've seen, and what does physical resemblance actually do to the performance, and how much does that matter? And again, it comes down to this question of, are we watching these films as entertainment or as education, or a bit of both? And I think what's really effective about Evil Angels is, yes, we're giving this very, very accurate history. Like, the film was very much based on accuracy. And think about that. The film, basically, Lindy Chamberlain was exonerated from her crimes in 1986, and the film came out in 1989. This film was still a topical discussion point in 1988-89 when the film came out. So accuracy was going to be crucial to this film and to how the film was read. Today, we're probably less versed with the facts, and think about that. Think about how meticulous the film is and how it tells us how meticulous the film is. How and why does it make it more believable when physical resemblance comes into it? Also, what sort of film was being set up here? Authentically, what sort of film was being set up? And what aspects of truth matters when adapting a real life person? And Meryl Streep certainly she was very meticulous in what she was doing. And you can see in this image here, the way that the film is taking those archival photos, those archival clips, which are circulating on YouTube, which you can sort of watch and compare, and what it's actually doing that in reenacting particular things. It's reenacting what we know and also filling in the blanks of what we don't know. Now, something about Australian cinema is the way that tourist destinations are depicted. And they're actually depicted as places gone bad, right? So what happens with Australian cinema is they often take the locations which become tourist destinations. Uluru in Northern Territory, Hanging Rock in Victoria. So many other films, they get places and spaces that people are aware of and people know and maybe people would travel to, and they just turn them into this place of horror. Mark Ryan, who's sort of an expert on Australian horror films, he says the outback is a dangerous, malevolent, and threatening force. Now, he's not talking about the outback in our reality. He's talking about the outback in the Australian cinema unreality. And I think there's something truthful about that in a film like Evil Angels, right? Where the outback becomes this strange, dark, creepy, gothic place. The sort of place where dingoes literally can run off with babies. Now, of course, the dingo ate my baby has become a line referenced in numerous examples, like Seinfeld, with Elaine saying it, The Simpsons, Supernatural, and Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, all use the line, the dingo ate my baby. Hey, newsflash, America. The film never says that line, the dingo ate my baby. It's never said. The line is the dingoes got my baby. I don't want to sound like a pompous twerp, but you think if you're going to keep ripping off the film and mocking the film and parodying the film, you might want to get the line right. Just putting it out there. Folks, I'm just putting it out there. But yeah, it is worth thinking about the film and the way it's been parodied and why it's been parodied. And of course, Meryl Streep's performance. Do we like the accent? Because it's more of a New Zealand accent because of Lindy Chamberlain's own origins as well. But what are you thinking about the performance and why this film has become so iconic so quickly for so many people? And it's interesting for a film that didn't actually do that well at the box office. Hugely influential in popular culture. Now, the film itself is based on a real-life incident that occurred near Uluru, Central Australia, on the night of August 17th, 1980. 9-week-old Azaria Chamberlain disappeared from the family tent during a camping trip. And can I just say, as a parent, good on you for being able to get yourself organised to go on a camping trip with a 9-week-old baby. I don't want to talk about my own parenting incompetency, but no way would I have been able to get myself together to get on a camping trip with a 9-week-old. Anyway, enough of me. The film was released less than 2 months after the Chamberlains were exonerated from the Northern Territory Court of Appeals, like I said. So, of course, the film is going to be really, really scrutinised through accuracy. And again, also really just concentrate on the public and the press and the way that Lindy Chamberlain is depicted as a victim and an outsider of what's going on. So the film did really well critically at the ACTA Awards, formerly known as the AFI Awards, in 1989. It won Best Film, Best Direction, Fred Schepisi, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Actor, Sam Neill, Best Actress, Meryl. It was nominated for a bunch of other ones as well. The Academy Awards, Meryl was nominated for Best Actress, which is pretty good. She didn't win, but she's got to lose. She's got to lose sometimes, doesn't she? She was nominated, and for a small Australian film that didn't do that well at the box office, to the fact that she was nominated for an Academy Award says a lot about her and really the pull of this film and just how powerful the film is. It's really not a film that many people forget. At Cannes, she won Best Actress. Fred was nominated. Fred Schepisi, of course, but we just know him as Fred, was nominated for an award as well. She was nominated for a bunch of other things. Golden Globes, because the film also played on TV, which basically just something about its diminished box office that the film's still playing on television. The fact that films playing on TV as a form of promotion, as a form of promoting the film. You may think that wouldn't work if you're going to play a film on the TV. Why would people go and pay money? But it actually has been a successful strategy for a number of films. Robert Connolly, the director, he has tried that out. And Australian films premiering on TV have often rated through the roof in addition to getting a good box office. So it's not a completely ridiculous strategy at all. But the reason I've got this image here is just to really say that the film is hugely respected critically and has really done well with the awards. And it might suggest something about why you would want to cast Meryl Streep in your film. Like I ask here, why cast Meryl? So the thing about Meryl and the thing about when the film was made, right, is that she's one of the leading actors of the 1980s. Now, by casting Meryl Streep, you're ensuring it will attract international attention, right? Absolutely. If you got Meryl Streep, whatever Meryl Streep was doing, there was great interest and focus in what she was doing, right? It brings a feminist inflection to the film, like all of her films at the time. In the 1980s, and still today, I think is true, Meryl formed her own genre of, well, sort of subgenre, of strong and determined outsiders. And it was sort of known, her films were kind of known as the Meryl Streep film, a particular kind of character that she was playing, often real people, based on real people. And the thing is, of Meryl playing Lindy Chamberlain, right? Lindy Chamberlain suddenly becomes part of this other gang of international figures that Meryl Streep had been playing, right? So Lindy Chamberlain joined the ranks of Streep's strong cinematic heroines. And I think that's really important in, firstly, why you would want Meryl Streep in your film, but also what it actually does to Lindy Chamberlain and internationalizing Lindy Chamberlain. Suddenly it becomes less of a story specifically about Australia and more of a story of, you know, ineffective court systems, ineffective media, ineffective public. And I think that's really interesting in how we read the film and probably why the film did so well outside of Australia. Because, of course, Hollywood is also a cinema very much based on outsiders, a cinema of outsiders. Now, Schepisi returned to make the biggest production ever mounted in Australia. So think about that. Cry in the Dark, but we agreed, didn't we? We were going to call it Evil Angels. Evil Angels, at the time, was the biggest production ever mounted in Australia, and the most ambitious as well. I'm not sure how much Meryl got paid. I'm assuming a big chunk of that fee probably went to Meryl. And why wouldn't it? When you see the film, I think you will be with me and applauding everything she really brings to this performance. It's tour de force acting at its best. Meryl Streep in full flight. Now, perhaps because of the very unflattering picture of bigotry and intolerance in Australia, the dark side of the easygoing g'day mate nation, Evil Angels did not perform well as it deserved to at the domestic box office. So think about that. Think about the way the film is depicting Australia and the way the film is depicting Australians and whether Australians want to see that. Australians have traditionally kept away from films that negatively depict them, right? What people want at the cinema, by and large, is to feel good, to feel happy, and to have a fun night out, right? Feel good films, right? Do really well. I mentioned The Sapphires before. The Sapphires is a perfect film, right? Now think about it. The number one reason why people go to the cinema still, a social experience. They go with other people to have a good social experience. So if you've got a film like Evil Angels, where it's actually saying, shame on you, Australian public, and you've got to remember at the time, a lot of the people going to this film did believe Lindy Chamberlain was guilty. That's what they believed. And the film is actually making them accountable for their own belief and their own gossiping. So a film like that is going to challenge the way people think of the film. Now, if you go into this film thinking that Lindy has been completely persecuted by a court system and by a media and by a public, then the film is going to represent that, right? And you're probably actually going to walk out feeling much better than, say, somebody who is really being challenged and questioned. But think about that. Think about the negative way that the public and the press are being depicted. Now, the budget of the film was $15 million, and the box office was a meager $3 million. And if you think about all of the publicity around the film, the fact that Meryl's winning awards at Cannes Film Festival and getting nominated for Academy Awards, to only bring in $3 million when this is such a hot topic in Australia suggests something about what's actually going on in the film, but also questions maybe some marketing strategies and things like that around the film. Now, another issue that I want to talk about today, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Evil Angels is wonderful. It is one of the great Australian films, one of the great Australian history films, and I know I can oversell a film, but I really believe that. I think it's such a good piece of filmmaking. It's a film that everyone should be watching. It's a film that, when we're talking about history and we're talking about the media and we're also talking about courtroom dramas, we should be aware of, certainly as Australians, when it's such a crucial Australian film, right? This film is not available on DVD or Blu-ray in Australia. You cannot get this film on DVD or Blu-ray in Australia. It just infuriates me, this sort of stuff. Where time and time again we talk about all of these films and how almost impossible they are to get on DVD for someone to just watch this film. It's incredible. And we're not just talking about shonky, shitty films here. The irony, all of those films are available on DVD. It's the good films, right? So if you've got the shitty genre films, Umbrella Entertainment have got that licked. They're all over it. You can find them, right? They do your beautiful box sets of all the crap Australian films of the 1980s. Not a problem. The good stuff, like Evil Angels, right, which isn't a genre film, right? Very hard to get. Almost, well, impossible to get. How do you get this film? How do you watch it in Australia? You have to import the film from overseas on DVD. Not available at JB Hi-Fi. It's just infuriating. So Ozflix, our good friends at Ozflix. Now, I love their tagline. Every Aussie movie, stop, ever stop. Well, not Evil Angels! I'm getting too fired up over this, but I'm just saying, if you're going to make a big statement like we've got every Aussie movie ever, and you don't really have, well, anything, people are going to get frustrated. If Ozflix do have Evil Angels, please write to me, prove me wrong. I hope they do. They should. I mean, why wouldn't you? Crazy. Anyway, something about Ozflix. Again, it comes back to that conversation of where does Australians go to actually access Australian movies? National Film and Sound Archive, right? Just start a website, start a YouTube channel and stream all of your movies. Give us your movies, please, so we can watch them, so we can see what kind of movies we make and continue to make, and the good stuff, the great stuff. I mean, God, Meryl Streep in Australia playing Lindy Chamberlain. Oh my God, fantastic! But we can't even see it. Shameful. Shameful! Australian cinema. If you do want to see Evil Angels in Australia, what you have to do is, it's complicated. It's complicated. You have to go to Australian Screen website, right? And you have to click on Find a Copy film, and there it says sources for the full version of Evil Angels is available from the Australian Centre for the Moving Image. That's ACMI, which is in Melbourne. Use the link below to search for videos and DVDs available via Acme's current lending service. Search the Acme collection. Submit email to Acme, where they never respond. I can just tell you that right now. Phone, good luck getting through. Non-theatrical loans. The National Film and Sound Archive loans copies for non-commercial screenings to organisations including educational institutions. Search the non-theatrical lending collection. Email screeningloans at the National Film and Sound Archive. Again, good luck getting any response. It's not as simple as actually just walking into a video store and finding it, or even just going to something like Fish Pond. It's all so frustrating. It's all so frustrating. Final thoughts. What makes this film Australian? Have a think about that. How is the film being represented as Australia? How does the film use locations? Uluru. How's that represented? Think about other Australian films that it reminds you of. What does it say about those locations? The way the locations are filmed and photographed. Think about the way that the film and the landscape is being sold to international audience members in a particular way, right? Think about the way that Meryl Streep is being framed in a particular way. What does the film say about the Australian nation? And I'm talking about the public, the press, the media, just the visual landscape of Australia. What does the film say about the international Australia, right? I mean, we've been talking a lot about this and the way that the Australian cinema is often kind of neutralized when it comes to the international, that everybody's on a sort of a level playing field. And there's something going on in the representation of Australia where Australian space becomes an other space, but it also becomes a very identifiable international space that's almost, in that kind of that Mad Max way, where it's otherized, but it's also very localized almost. Historically, how can we consider this film as Australian? All right, what does it tell us about Australia? What does this film say about Australian history? And what does this film say about the contemporary Australian world? Has the film dated? Has the film dated through the way that the public are being depicted, through the way the media are being depicted? Elizabeth Avram, I think it's worth throwing in her quote here. An Australian film is the notion of resonance of a particular text with an Australian audience. How does the film resonate with you? Are you surprised the film failed at the box office? Budget of $15 million, and it only made $3 million. FYI, for a film to make a profit, it basically has to make 2.5 times the box office budget. So, what would that be? Well, if the film was $15 million, it'd have to make 30, 35, 40 or something, wouldn't it? I think so. I think that's right. What was the intention of the film, and does it succeed? All right. Are you taken by the film? Does the film work? Now, even if you didn't like the film, right, you may think, well, it succeeds greatly. Or you may think, I like the film, but I don't actually think it succeeds. So think about, why did the film succeed? What was its intention? If you've got ideas about the box office and why it didn't pull in a particular box office, think about that. And if it went for a more warmer, fuzzier kind of feeling of a film, would the film therefore have failed even if it drew a bigger box office? Is the toughness and the harshness and the reality of the film the success of the film? Also, Fred Schepisi, the fact that he went to America, he'd been working in America, and he came back almost as an outsider working in Australia. And Meryl Streep, of course, we need to talk about Meryl Streep and the fact that she's not just playing an outsider in this crazy world. She is an outsider in this crazy world. And I do need to give Sam Neill his due as well. He's absolutely superb in this. Sam Neill is a great, great screen actor. And he just delivers fantastic performance again and again and again. And he is so good in this film. As is Meryl, as is pretty much the whole film. I'll be interested to know what you make of Evil Angels, A Cry in the Dark, aka, because it remains such an important Australian film. David Stratton was asked his top Australian movies, and I'm pretty sure he nominated Evil Angels as one of his very favourites. I know that he thinks that it's probably the best Australian film of the 1980s. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Look forward to chatting more about Meryl, Sam, and dingoes stealing babies